Welcome to Two Facet, a podcast about building digital products. Hosted by Matt Mikulski, Product Manager, and myself, Juncal González, Product Designer. Join us to listen to our conversations about product development and how each role sees it from their perspective. Let's start!
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the 5th episode of the Two Facet podcast. We are having two hosts as usual. One of them is me, Mateusz Mikulski, and here with me is Juncal. Hi, Juncal.
Hey, hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm super good. I'm super happy to be here recording.
Yeah, it's the 5th one. It's the number is growing. So today we prepared the topic. Today we wanted to talk about redesigns. So actually I proposed this topic this time. I came with a question. So maybe I'll do like a quick introduction to the listeners. So in my product manager career, many times I heard designers or mainly designers coming and saying like, hey, we need to redesign the screen like from the scratch, and
That's it.
and then it's always interesting why people want to redesign, and then even more interesting for me when to not redesign, or like why those redesigns are so important. A lot of those designers were pointing to things like coherence, that hey, our UI needs to be coherent, we need to look the same on every screen and things like this. But this does not translate to business value every time. So maybe you can give me some spoiler to like a designer brain.
Yes.
Then maybe together we'll help future designers to solve this problem better way.
Yes, so I totally understand you because redesign is a big topic. A lot of times as designers we see a screen and we are like sure that needs a redesign, right? But I totally understand you, like you have a lot of things to do, like a lot of features to add, a lot of bugs to fix, and why should this one be the first, right?
If something works, why breaking it? Like old people
Exactly.
saying.
So I guess there are redesigns that might come super clear from a user feedback, like maybe you got the feedback and stuff. But we are talking about these redesigns that don't come from a straight feedback or data or something like that, right? So first moment someone comes and is like, I want to redesign, or no, this page needs to be redesigned, okay? And then you should ask, okay, why? And normally it's like, oh, it looks super amateur, or it looks very old, or we haven't touched it in years. But what does it mean? I mean, it means nothing, actually. It means that you're bored with it. And so a few things can happen here. Maybe the designer who is asking for this redesign is biased by his own cognition, let's say. So he's biased by his own experience and he's more like visual solution driven, right? So he sees the page, it's not super nice, and he wants to have a redesign. That can be a problem because there's not like really a big justification for that. But then it can happen as well that there is a UX problem there, but the designer does not know how to explain it or how to sell it to the stakeholder. And I think when this happens, this is a problem. Yeah.
And I would say this is a lot of the cases. Every time I try to dig as much as I can and try to see if there's actually some UX problems we could do with the redesign. So, just to understand, we don't try to say don't redesign ever. It's just maybe there are ways to think when to redesign. So
Exactly.
Justification, trying to understand if there's any usability problems underlying, then that can be super helpful. But are there any quantitative things we can look at as designer or someone that wants to think about redesign, or are there any things you can go for?
If you're asking for a redesign, you want to make the usability of the page better, right? Basically. So And we need to remember that usability is quality, so we want to improve the quality of a page, and usability especially is based on 5 components kind of thing. So one is learnability, so how easy it's to learn the interface for the user. So the first time the user comes, how easy it is for him to learn where the things are, to find the stuff. Then the second one, it's efficiency, like how fast he can perform the tasks, how efficiently he can do that. Third one can be memorability, which is once the user comes back to the interface, if he remembers where the things were. The fourth is errors, which is how many errors and how big the errors are that the user is making in the interface. And the fifth one, the last one, is satisfaction, how pleasant the design is. And this is the one that it's more related to visuals, and this is the one where we focus the most, but only this one alone, I think it's not enough to sell a redesign to stakeholders. So as designers, we need to know how to check for the other components that are missing. And
those are, you can go from those components and translate them into, I hate it, but like a more business level language. So things like learnability, they relate to things like onboarding time. So how much resource and how easy the system gonna be to start up. So how fast you can get engaged users in your product. Efficiency is like, will you be solving the problem, or will your solution be the good one? So if you can, make the user, maybe not in every time, in every case you want to have user less time on your page, but in B2B products, you don't want your users to have long tasks. So if you can shorten the task, make it smoother for the user, it's always good. So in our case, it's secretaries, we talked about it. So for them, anything that removes a hassle is an amazing thing. So the moment they don't need to type anything is the perfect scenario. Then memorability, this again translates to how later metrics like NPS is it gonna be shaped up about, like if the users will really want to share that later with other potential customers of yours, will they be promoter of your product? Errors, come on, every company somehow strikes problems, and errors in here, some can be issues like in the code, and then you end up with Jira tasks, but those can be also like errors in terms of like the user just is unable to finish the flow because of the configuration or how the design is built. We also in our lives like screens where there was a big red button to do the action, and the user was saying like, if only I would see where is the button to finish the action, it would be an amazing screen. And it's an error too, and if you have feedbacks like this, you can justify that much easier to the product person or any other someone responsible for prioritization or anything else. I guess this is like, then those components you look at from design perspective, you can think about this translation map to this business KPIs and measurements.
Yeah, so product managers do care as well about these quality components from usability, but from a different angle. So I guess it's just the clue of finding a common language, right?
Yeah, exactly, and it needs to be that. But what I always promote for everybody is trying to be as proactive as possible. So if for some reason it doesn't click automatically, so someone listens to our podcast, goes to their boss virtual and says like, hey, we're gonna redesign because I found that the efficiency component is fucked up in our product, this may not work. So it's always valuable to try to that's why our podcast exists. But to try to think from the other angle and try to justify that from more business perspective. Same for product managers. Sometimes thinking about a bit of a solution can help us too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, but So you can justify all of those redesigns. You can go through those quality components. They may help you to talk with the with the product manager. But is there something that can tell you that this is a good moment to redesign, or for maybe not to redesign, but more to this point about having the same design on every page and having like a repeat. So you start up, every product is just built on the fly. You build UI on the time. We talked about those early stages in the early episodes, but then at some point you end up in a Frankenstein. So we also talked about UX depth. So it's gonna be there. You're gonna create some. So is there something that tells us, hey, it's worth to start fixing that?
Yeah. So first of all, it all falls into the cognitive load. So all this of, hey, things look different, we need consistency, and it's like, okay, but consistency, why, right? Because we as humans, when we are doing tasks, we have a limited amount of processing power, like a computer, right? Which is our cognitive load. And we need to not overload this one, right? So the user can perform the tasks. And there are things that we normally do to minimize the cognitive load that might be that you can translate into common phrases, like when you hear a designer saying it doesn't look clean, right? This is a very common phrase from a designer. It actually it means that it has a lot of visual clutter, that it's loading this cognitive load, right? So it's better to have a visual hierarchy to help the user find exactly what he's looking for. Or maybe another phrase like, oh, there's too much going on this page, right? It's like, okay, but what do you mean by that? So that means that the user needs to make too many decisions at the same time on a page. And that requires as well a lot of... Yeah?
It's a classic action of, hey, so what shall I do on this page? And usually when the answer is this, and then, okay, we have a problem. Like, so what exactly do you want to do here? Exactly.
And then regarding this sentence that you mentioned, like, it's not consistent, it's about reducing the cognitive load by building on existing mental models. So by using the patterns that the user already knows. So imagine that, this is a bit exaggeration, okay? But imagine that a bin icon will sometimes delete and sometimes will duplicate, right? You would be like guessing.
Yeah.
Or that the arrow back will take you sometimes to the previous page and sometimes to the upper level. So it's not consistency just for the sake of consistency. It's because the consistency reduces the cognitive load. And you can...
Yeah, it's like many bars on the bottom on iPhones, right? So it's like a pattern Apple invented some time ago for them, and now any other menu in iPhone just looks weird, and it's like, what the fuck is happening there?
Exactly. So you have consistency, as you said, from other products. So something that iPhone does, it's already recognized by a lot of users. So maybe you want to have it for your app too. That would be more like an external consistency. But also you can build your own inside your own product. So if you have users that come every day, they will know what the things do and they will be used to it, and the cognitive load will be less. So how do you know if you have too much cognitive load or not too many, whatever? You can do the user testing. You can use data as well. But if you don't have any of those, you can also do a heuristic kind of test.
Yeah.
So No,
sorry. Please go for them. I was asking if there is a list of heuristics that you would like to share.
There is a list. It's a big long. we can. The heuristics are principles proven and recognized principles that have already been tested in the past. So you can analyze your interface based on that by experts. So if you're an expert on UX, and it's even better if you do it by a group of experts. So everyone analyzes the app, analyzing these 10 principles and giving like a rate or finding errors. So this way you can have a more specific way of saying we need to redesign exactly what and how. Shall I go for the list?
So let's go for it. Let's go for it. Maybe in that episode description we'll also link to some list online somewhere, so the listeners can find it.
Yes.
But I guess we can go through it quickly.
Exactly.
Let's try.
The one I'm gonna use here is the one from Norman Nilsson Group, which is a super recognized source. So yeah, the first one is visibility of system status, which is that the user knows the status of the system in every moment, right? And this would be like if you're waiting for an elevator, the elevator will have a light telling you that it's coming and will tell you in which floor is it, right? It's kind of like that.
In digital world, in maybe the Google Docs, so they have a status about things being saved. So it's in process of saving, it's saved, and then you have an information when the last save happened. So you have all three informations about what's happening with your current work and whatever you type. So it's a similar pattern, and you can see it in, I don't know, some systems usually have, draft finalized version or synced in progress or with error, right? So
exactly.
I guess this is this.
It's exactly that. Yes. So then this way the user feels super safe that he knows what's going on, Then the second one is the match between the system and the real world. So this is basically that that the digital product or the product uses the same language as the user and uses same concepts, same phrases, same words. Basically, the buttons are this, right? So we took the buttons from the real world and we put them in the digital. And at the beginning, they even had the shape and everything to look exactly like a button, like something you could press.
Yeah. It's the whole school of skeuomorphism and few other ideas that still exist in some places.
Mm-hmm.
But even nowadays, it's like still approaches to that. So the whole idea about the initial material design was about the screen should act as a real material.
Exactly.
So when the Google was doing all of the interactions and the foldings and everything like this was based on like how the material behaves in the real life. So how you can show that the windows grows in more natural way.
Exactly.
Of course, I'm like building design system for Google. This question may sound silly, of like how we can mimic the paper, but I do believe it's applicable, and it does make sense to ask this question: how much silly does it sound to you? It is worth to ask at some level. Of course, if you're using Bootstrap or you're like in super early stages of your product, maybe I wouldn't worry too much. But it is important, for sure.
Yeah, and not only sorry. No, I was going to say that not only visually, but as well regarding the flow or the order of the actions. So for the user, so maybe in the backend, there's a lot of weird connection happening, but the user doesn't care about it. The actual flow he sees needs to be a logical order that makes sense for him in the real world. So if he's adding some products to his basket, it should be similar that when he's doing a shopping in a shop, let's say, and not care about the connections that might be happening in the backend or whatever.
Oh, and what's the next heuristic then?
So the third one is user control and freedom, right? And this basically it's undo and redo, right? And go out and go in. So the user feels under control of the interface. He knows that if he does something, he can undo, he can redo, he can get in, and he can get out. Yeah.
Okay. So now no comments about this one from me. It's always important for the user to know how to manage the UI he's in. And then error prevention. I know because we have notes. What's the next one? What would you say about error prevention?
No, before error prevention, it comes consistency and standards.
I jumped.
Yeah, but we mentioned it. We mentioned it already. That consistency, it's important to improve learnability. So how fast the user learns the interface. And it reduces the cognitive load when the user is using it, which basically means if in your application you always use the orange button to add things to the basket, let's keep it like that. Not that sometimes the orange button adds things to the basket, sometimes it removes things, and sometimes it takes you to a different page, because then every time the user will need to stop and read and think what's gonna happen next.
Yeah, translating that, the only thing that I would add is like let's say you're building like a SaaS product, you can apply the same but in a bit different words. So you should have all of the buttons blue, but you should use them to the main actions. They not necessarily need to do the same action every time, but probably all of the buttons that are the main ones should be blue then in your product, right? So imagine you have few features.
Yes.
It's then
Exactly, that's a good that's a good point. Like they are all the main action. It can be different actions, but they are
the main one, and you don't use ones like green, ones blue, ones yellow for the main actions. You try to get the same action on every screen with the same color at least.
Exactly. Basically, consistency is solve the same problem the same way.
Yeah. So error prevention, my jump before.
Yeah. So error prevention is give the user the tools to help him make the least errors as possible, right? So for instance, I don't know, instead of allowing the user to fill up a super big form without any clue or of anything, and allowing open fields, and then when he finishes and he sends the form, there's a lot of errors, right? So you can maybe put hints into each field, like how it should be filled. Maybe you can put an example. So ways for the user to
not do
to have the less errors as possible.
Nice one. So it's things like a pattern of a phone number if you expect some pattern, right? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
Exactly, with an example, or maybe with the size of the box. Yeah. And especially prevent the high cost ones. So when the user is going to delete something, that it's gonna be difficult to recover, right? As well. So making that super clear.
Oh, a classic one. This one is from Heroku, but I saw it in different softwares too. Is like when you want to delete the server, you need to type the name of the application, just to be sure you really want to delete this application. So you click the button and then you need to type the name of your machine that you want to delete, just to, be sure you want to do it.
This is a super good one. Yeah, I've seen also when deletion checkboxes. So it's not only continue button, so you need to stop, read the checkboxes and mark them. But I think yours is even better because you need to actually type something. So you need to do it super consciously.
Yeah, in their case, you're deleting databases and whole applications. So it's like maybe reversible in some cases, but it's like a big operation you shouldn't be doing easily. Yeah, okay, and so we are half of the list. What's the next point?
So the sixth one is recognition rather than recall. So instead of forcing the user to remember where something was, things should be easy to find in the interface, so the user can recognize it, even if he doesn't remember from the last time.
Yeah, it's a classic. Early days I was working in some company and I was responsible for some training of users of a software on the other end. It was happening through phone calls, and then later we were like training them in person. And what was classical was those people like writing down the hierarchy of a structure of a menu. So it was like an old system for insurance management. Like the big insurance company had their own internal system that they were teaching like providers to use, and they had all of those like cascade menus. So you saw those nodes of those people of like, okay, I want to do this, so I click here and then I click there and then I click there and then I click somewhere. And it was really, when they started using that system, it was exactly like this. So instead of looking at the screen and trying to understand what's there, it was almost impossible because of the number of informations and how it was built. Instead of seeing and understanding the screen, they were just like taking their notes and doing like a robot. Okay, so now I need to click this, and then I need to click that, and then I need to click this. And yeah, it was funny to look and to see. And there is the other part of this story also, is like at some moment this became their muscle memory. So the problem is the system were never built in a way that they can understand it. So they teach themselves to use the system without understanding the system. It's just hacking around the tool. So the moment when the redesign may happen, or you want to do it, you have another problem, because then your users are super used to it. It's muscle memory. So removing that bias or that behavior from their brains and changing it to something more clear may be really hard, because in some of the cases they may just not understand the process they're doing. It's just they know they're clicking the buttons, and then you may
exactly,
be
and they feel more comfortable in something they already know, even though they took them a lot of time and effort to learn. So yeah, this is a thing that can happen.
Okay, so next 7th point gonna be flexibility and efficiency of use. So
yes, so this is especially important, I would say, for softwares or applications that have power users that use all the time or a lot of times, which is basically allowing shortcuts or like advanced ways of accessing the information or doing the tasks to speed up the interaction.
Okay.
Maybe gestures, maybe personalization, so you can personalize the functions you want just for yourself, so then you can act faster.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and then the 8th one, my favorite, truly, not joking and not ironic. So aesthetics and minimalist design.
Exactly.
I like it. I like less happening, better it is. I mean.
Exactly. So only show what is relevant to the user in the screen. So it's not aesthetic in the sense that it should be pretty. It's aesthetic in the way that the interface should contain only what the user needs, right? And everything that it says extra will add up to this cognitive load that we were talking about. And there's this exercise, which is not that easy to do, which is you take your design and your interface and try to remove things, remove lines, remove anything until you cannot remove anything else anymore.
Yeah, I met in my life few CEOs that were obsessed about this thing, about like every pixel needs to have a justification. Unless it's white, then fine, like okay, you have a background, but then the other is why it's there. I mean, okay, is it part of a button? So then do you need this button? Maybe you can do a link, it has less pixels. You know, it's like how minimalistic you can go with it. With keeping the functions, of course. So it's
you need to keep the elements the user need to perform the task. And I've heard as well this of the every pixel should have a meaning, and even the white ones, you said no, maybe the whites are background, but even the white ones have a meaning, because white space tells you if things belong together or they don't belong together, right? You can use the white space to make groups of content, groups of information. So every pixel.
Every pixel, yeah, okay, better one. So now I have a better challenge to my future fellow designers. Okay, so from minimalist design, where shall we go next? What's the next point?
So the next point, number 1, is help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. So this is basically when an error happens. I mean, if you could not avoid the error, what was the error, what happened, and what can I do to solve it, right? So I'm pretty sure we all have experienced that we're using a software or an application and we get a super weird error like 507 error, I don't know, call failed. And it's like,
Yeah.
what happens? What do I do next, right? So
shall I restart? Shall I retry? Is it working? Is it down? Didn't pay for it? Like, what does it mean? Yeah.
exactly. A simple pattern is to tell the user what happened and what can he do to fix it.
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe he can't do anything, but you can provide a contact to support or something like that, right?
I love every time when we're building solutions or I'm using any product when you have like a link to settings page, for example, or the place you can fix whatever is broken, so you don't need to find it. Even in forms, so if you have like a super long form and there is an error and there is a number of fields, you don't need to scroll through those 25. If you scroll there and you have like anchor there, it's way easier for anybody to look through it. Okay, and we close our list with help and documentation for our solution.
The last one is help and documentation, which is better not to have. So ideally, you should have an interface that is clear enough. But still, it's super good to have a place for additional explanation in case the user had a problem or something he's looking for or he doesn't understand. So to make sure that if the user doesn't understand something and needs more information, there's a place for that information. And there's a saying that I like. It rolls on Instagram and stuff, which is like UX, it's like a joke. An interface, it's like a joke. If you need to explain it, it's not that good.
Yeah, I know the joke, and it's a good one. I mean, it's true one. It does work. So we went through the list of heuristics. We know how to justify the possible redesign to the business using the quality components and the translations. We know heuristics, so something that can help us to understand what should be redesigned or which direction we can take. And then, so how do you decide if you should redesign or you shouldn't fully redesign? So you even if you have a redesign in mind, you can approach it like iteratively. So hey, we will be changing that bit by bit, and at some moment we'll go to the dreamed solution, versus hey, let's just redesign from scratch and go to the B version tomorrow.
Yeah, so for sure, first thing is that it's super important that after this process you have clear the problem definition, so why you want to redesign, and you need to have a clear objective with the redesign. And then after that, it's like what you say, shall I do everything, or maybe small changes will suffice? So maybe here you can use data to determine the extent of the problem, or maybe come back to the heuristics, but you need to really check the extent of the problem and apply the least amount of changes that are necessary. And even though we sometimes prefer to do the full redesign because it's gonna look so much prettier or so much better, users tend to like the designs that are safe and familiar. So imagine that you are a super bad organized person, but you are used to your kitchen, how you have the things in your kitchen, and I come to your place and overnight I'm like, oh, this kitchen is super bad organized, let me put everything on the proper place, right? So the next day you won't be able to find anything and you will be mad at me that I moved the things, even if now they make more sense and they are better placed. So it's better to be on the safe side, to have the users with the familiar environment, and try and make smaller changes if possible.
Yeah, I would add to this also it depends on your scale, but at some moment there is also frequency that comes into the play. Meaning, if you do a lot of small changes, they may be even worse to the end user than one big one. It's like with the plaster, it's the same feeling. So sometimes it's just better to do the redesign other than every week changing something on the screen, because users see that too. And then this is like a lot of small bursts of their focus like stall for your product and your change. So
Yeah.
It also like
So
comes
then-
into play. Of
Yeah.
how many times you can deploy or how many changes you will actually ship to the users at the end of the day in short period of time.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess if you have clear the extent of the problem you're trying to solve, you can see as well which approach to take.
Okay. Yeah. One last point from me, really, about the data. So you mentioned to look into the data. One tip from me that's working sometimes in the redesign projects is don't spend too much time on finding the measurement or fine tuning it. So though a lot of this kind of the projects are also the ones that are not worth spending time on, like fine tuning the exact metric to get to perfect measurement of the impact, because sometimes they're just like faster to develop or do than we'll spend time on like finding the measurement. It's always valuable to have it, but I do believe there should be space to just use things like heuristics and just go and do the leap of faith in some of the moments, not always, and not about redesigning the whole system probably, but there are places where you can just like rely on heuristics and be fine with it. So don't get too obsessed about measuring design. So
That's good. Good tip.
that closes our list for today's episode.
Okay.
It was fun for me. I hope we helped some people
Yes.
talking about redesigns in the future in the people with their peers. Are there any things you would like to leave our listeners with as a tips, like a summary?
Yes, so as a designer, when you want to redesign something, stop for a second and ask yourself why, and try to match it with the quality components of usability, or even do heuristics, even if it's just by yourself and you don't have much time. There's always a way to, okay, let me check this, if the user has access to this, if he has access to that. So you have a more solid way to sell the redesign to the stakeholder than, hey, I want to redesign this because it looks cluttered or it looks old.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, you can do it even with low resources. So not further than today, we were doing the same thing with the design and asking ourselves if are there no loopholes the users will be in and they cannot get out from some settings. So it's on level of 3 people, but this is something you check for yourselves. Okay,
Exactly.
amazing. So thank you, listeners. Thank you for being with us for this episode. Hope you liked it, and see you or hear with you soon with the next episode. Thank you, Juncal.
Yeah, see you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to continue the conversation and challenge our thoughts, mention us on Twitter. We are at 2Facet Podcast. If you have any questions you would like us to answer in the next episodes, send us an email to 2facetpodcast@gmail.com. And if this content was useful for you and you would like to support our work, there is a few simple things you can do. Share it with anyone you think may benefit from this content. Subscribe or follow the podcast in the platform where you are listening now. And if you are on Apple Podcast, a rating and a review will be much appreciated. Thank you for listening, and until next time.